Amen. I'm happy to be here. Good morning, everybody. What a great time of worship this morning. Gets me pumped up. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Let's just take a moment of silence to remember those who gave their lives protecting our freedoms here in America. The babies won't be quiet, but that's okay. We'll just take a 30-second just moment of silence. And Lord, we thank you for the men and women who fought on behalf of this country to give us religious freedom at the Revolutionary War, to be able to read Bibles for ourselves and to worship you and to devote ourselves to following your ways. Lord, we thank you for the men and women who died in the Civil War, setting the slaves free once and for all here in America. We thank you, Lord, that people were willing to bleed and to die over the tragedy of slavery and change the face of economy and the face of culture globally. Lord, we thank you for those who died in the world wars, fighting to prevent the tyranny of corrupt government that was butchering people, and in the Vietnam War and the other wars, Lord, that we've had. Fighting against terrorism and oppressive governments over other people, Lord. Coming to the aid of nations and peoples that couldn't protect themselves. Lord, we thank you that people were willing to pay that ultimate price. And Lord, we consider ourselves blessed. And may we have the courage to face enemies ourselves wherever they should arise, not just in combat, but also in the spirit of love and redemption, forgiving our enemies and reconciling with them as best as we can. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right, so we have a Lust series prayer in the bulletin. I know we're doing 3 prayers together, but they're good. And this is really a prayer I would like you guys to be praying every day. It's a daily kind of a thing. It's got to get in you, got to become a part of the way you think and feel. And so take time every day to pray through this prayer. It's also online at deeperchurch.org/notes. But I'm going to pray through it out loud. If you guys want to speak with me, you're welcome to. I'll make it optional. So, Lord, create in me a pure heart, O God. Give me the joy of your salvation. Grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. I count myself dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Help me to set my heart against sin in my body and mind, so that I won't obey its evil desires. Teach me to master my desires and not be mastered by them. How empty and worthless are thoughts of lust and coveting. I make a covenant today with my eyes to not look in order to lust, nor let my heart be led by my eyes. I offer my body and mind to you, God, to be your dwelling place, as an instrument of righteousness, not wickedness. Any temptation I face, God has made sure I can withstand. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. So I delight in you, my Lord. From you come rivers of living water bursting from my soul. You satisfy all my desires with good things. Your presence is sweeter than honey. Your eternal kind of life is greater than every worldly pleasure. So in you I live and move and find my being. Amen. And I saw that typo there. From you come rivers of vining water. It's living water. We'll try to correct that. Vining water. That sounds interesting, though, right? Yeah, rivers of grape juice. Also, just want to highlight the reading plan. The reading plan is designed for you to read once a day, 7 days a week, and to go back through these same chapters week in and week out for a couple months, so that these concepts in these chapters really get in you. The process of becoming more like Christ is a partnership process. It's between you, your will, your mind, and the Holy Spirit. Both of you work together to change your life. And it has to be a partnership. The Holy Spirit will not stomp your will. If you are unwilling to go there with him, he's not going to force you. And you will find yourself coming to church for decades, but never growing free in Christ. You have to do work. I know. Paul says in Philippians 2, work out your salvation. Work out your salvation. He goes on with fear and trembling, all those kinds of things. But the point is, you work out your salvation. How do you work out your salvation? By diligently putting the Lord and his ways before the mind and choosing him and being aware of his presence. The awareness of God's presence then gives you insight, knowledge, and motivation to do what is righteous and good, okay? And to desire what is righteous and good. Our desires are broken. And if we follow our desires, we will follow ourselves into deeper brokenness. So we have to become a master over our desires. And I'm going to read our passage from Matthew again. This is my own translation from the Greek. Good material here. Every translations that you have are good too. You can follow along. Matthew 5:27-30. You heard the saying, no adultery, but I tell you that everyone looking at a woman in order to lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If now this right eye of yours traps you, gouge it out and throw it away from you. For you are enhancing yourself by destroying a part of the body, so that the whole body won't be thrown into hell. And if this right hand of yours traps you, cut it off and throw it away from you. For you're enhancing yourself by destroying a part of the body, so that the whole body won't depart into hell. Okay, so Jesus is joking there. I don't know if, and maybe you disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But your eye does not cause you to sin. You cause your eye to be used as a tool for sin. Your hand doesn't cause you to sin. Your hand doesn't have a mind of its own, right? The mind that controls your hand is the mind that you have, that you control. It is your mind that causes your hand to reach out to do evil things, or your eye to be used as a form of coveting or lust. So Jesus is talking about lust. That word for lust is also the word for coveting. Even though Jesus says everyone who looks at a woman in order to lust, that does not mean that it only applies to people who look at women in order to lust. Women can look at men in order to lust. They can fantasize about men. Romance novels are more of the system of lusting that women take, the fantasy of a man who desires them in some kind of a way, the Prince Charming that sacrifices and lays down their life to serve them and woo them. The fantasy of having a man like that in your life instead of the man you got stuck with. Okay, that's lust. It's not lusting with the eyes, it's lusting with the fantasy, with your imagination. And lusting is also coveting. So window shopping, flipping through magazines and dreaming about all the gadgets and toys and clothes and whatever. Be careful. In fact, that practice is probably, in general, a bad idea. I'm not going to put a total prohibition on it as a preacher because I haven't made up my mind on whether that's completely wrong. But I do know if you obsess about things that you don't have, you're probably not thinking about being content with what you do have. And the Bible does command us and teach us to be content with what we do have. So anything that leads you out of a place of contentment with where you are and what you have is probably destructive for your soul and for your mind and for your character. So cut off the chains of that. Now, how do we do that is really the issue here. Last week, we talked about part one. And once again, if someone's at the sound booth, we're going to pop up the link to the sermon notes, deeperchurch.org/sermon notes. Part one is because Jesus is talking about a specific kind of lusting, but we're hitting the whole topic here because we're going to spend some time. The reason why I do that is if I hit one sermon with you, you're like, wow, Richie, that was a great sermon. You forget about it by Wednesday or actually by Monday evening, especially on Memorial Day weekend after the barbecue. All you're remembering Tuesday is whether that burger gave you food poisoning or not. And you have no idea or thought of what I said this morning. So what we need to do is go from just getting our discipleship from the preacher on Sunday morning, which is a good thing, to tilling the soil in our life every day throughout the week. You see, I started Invisalign about I'm on tray 16, so that was 32 weeks ago. It took me about 6 months to see any kind of change with my teeth. Wearing these things that were pulling, I felt pain constantly. My teeth felt like they were getting yanked out of my head a little bit sometimes, okay? It was painful. Not too painful, but I'm not trying to scare anybody. Dr. Bill is like, hey, don't make it sound too scary there. Yeah. No, it wasn't too bad, but there is pain involved. And just like with braces, there's pain involved. But I didn't see any visible change for quite a long time. Now, it would have been very easy for me to say, you know what, I don't think these things are working. I haven't seen a change in 2 months. I've been at this for 2 months and there's no change. Forget this. And throw it out and just stop. You don't want my money back. There's been no change. Wait, hold on a second. It takes a year to get there. And don't we do that with our spiritual life? We try something for a day. We try something for a Sunday morning, for a weekend, or maybe a week or two. Then we drop the ball. We forget to do it. We just stop doing it. We haven't disciplined ourselves at all. And then a couple months down the road, we're like, it's not working for me. It's not working for me. I don't see any change in my life. Well, you got to work it for it to work. You know, you got to work it in order for it to work. So the first type of lusting is when you see someone and you have an inappropriate thought that pops into your mind. This is reactionary. Okay, you're not looking in order to lust. That's what Jesus is talking about. You're not going to the mall to walk through it, to look through every store and to dream about all the things you could have, but you don't. And whether or not you should rack up your credit card bill to buy stuff that you don't need. That's looking in order to lust. But if you go through the store and you're going to buy something, you're there to buy something, and you see something and you're like, hey, I should have that. My life would be happier with that. Wouldn't it be great if I had a brand new barbecue? After all, mine's getting a little rusty and whatever. Fill in the blank, rest of the argument. So reactionary, you see something you want, inappropriate thought pops into your head. It's more crucial when we're dealing with people. Then how do we respond? Last week, we talked about the 3-step process. Don't consent. When you recognize an inappropriate thought, you say, I'm not going to consent to this. Then I'm going to adjust the mind. Zeke said, you change the channel. You're changing the channel of your mind away from the bad thought, and you're turning that bad thought into a good thought, actually. Okay, so I see a beautiful young woman wearing a bikini on the beach. I did not go there for the intention of seeing her, but I did. An inappropriate thought pops into my head. I'm like, uh-oh. 1, I don't consent to this inappropriate thought in my head. 2, and now I'm going to adjust the mind. She is a child of God, a daughter. It is not appropriate to think about her in this way, but she's meant to be treated holy and respectable, not as eye candy for me or some kind of way for me to get pleasure by imagining anything with her. But I'm going to pronounce blessings on her. I'm going to view her as a sister and a daughter, okay, or a mother, whatever the age bracket is, okay? But you're going to treat them like family. You're going to see them in a wholesome way. I'm adjusting the way I'm seeing that. And then I'm going to fix my mind upon the crucified and resurrected Christ. Why that specifically? 1, Scripture says that we should do that constantly. 2, the crucified Christ is one who lays down his life and dies to sin. Sin is empty, worthless. It leads to death. So I'm going to look at Christ in my mind on the cross, dying for my mind that has inappropriate thoughts that pop in there. And he doesn't want me to live according to that way of life. Then I'm going to look at the resurrected Christ, because there's a greater life and a greater future that awaits me, and a power that is greater than sin that is made available to me. Okay? So that is the general process when an inappropriate thought pops into your mind, reactionary. The second category that we're looking at today is looking for the purpose of inappropriate thoughts, okay? This is when you are at home, you're going to watch a movie, and you select a movie that's going to have some maybe scantily dressed women or sex scenes or whatever. You're going to type into your computer websites that you know you shouldn't be going to. You're looking in order to lust. You're going to the beach because you know, hey, it's a warm day. People are going to be in bathing suits, and I'm going to go and I'm going to watch, okay? Or you walk through the mall or a place or anything where you are premeditated. You're going in with the intention of looking. Okay, and you look with the intention of gaining pleasure, okay? Now, this can happen with the first category, where you look and a thought pops into your mind and then you double take, okay? Oh, bad thought. It's like, I enjoyed that. I'd like to see a little bit more. Okay, then you look again. And now you're looking in order to lust. Okay, so step 1 can lead to step 2, okay? Or type 1 lusting can lead to type 2 lusting. The difference with type 2 lusting is type 1 lusting is a mental reaction. Okay, these are thoughts that pop into your mind and you don't have a lot of control over them popping into your mind, but you can control them after they get there. Okay, type 2, though, is not a mind thing, it's a heart thing. Your will is bent toward looking to get pleasure. The process of changing the heart is quite a bit different than changing what you're thinking about, right? On that note, Heather was complaining to me a few weeks ago, many weeks ago. We have junior Bible quiz questions. and we've written songs to them for memory verses. And Hannah and I, and we got a few other people to help us write songs, and she's been playing them on repeat for Mikey to learn the songs. And she says every night when I'm trying to go to bed, I have a song that's stuck in my head. When I wake up, there's a song that's stuck in my head. I can't get the songs out of my head. I'm trying all I can do to get the songs out of being stuck in my head. I'm like, well, that's kind of the purpose of the songs. But sometimes thoughts can be pervasive, okay? And they keep popping up. And we say, well, I tried to adjust the thought and to get rid of it and to change the thought. Now, this is a good thought, so it's not really a big deal. But as far as the Bible quiz songs go, but with the lustful thought, sometimes we try to change the channel. We try to adjust the thought. We're actually not just changing the channel. What we're doing is we're taking the bad thought and we're deconstructing it and reconstructing it, because with an inappropriate thought comes a lie that the inappropriate thought is built upon. That deep down, a woman or a man is there for my pleasure, or looking is not a big deal at all. I'm not harming anybody by looking and thinking a bad thought. Well, actually, you're harming yourself, and you're spitting in God's face, who created your mind. Like, your mind is supposed to be a place of God's dwelling and a place of his worship, not a place of idolatry, not a place of lust and evil desires to fester, okay? When your evil desires fester in your mind, resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness, anger, and lust, those are ungodly, and God is not pleased with a mind that festers on those kinds of things. God is not pleased with it, and you will be destroyed by it, because what is in the mind and meditated on routinely becomes your character. And then your character plays out in the ways you react and respond to people. So, the way that we change the will, it takes a lot longer to do that. And you have to intend to do it. And there is a 3-step process. It's in the sermon notes. It's VIM, okay? V-I-M, vision, intention, and methods. We need those 3 things in order to change our heart, to renovate our heart from not wanting to look in order to lust. And if you find yourself there, like, listen, I'm there too. I am at a place where I want to look in order to lust. And I have to sometimes consciously say, Richie, you should not want to look in order to lust. Let's get in the presence of God and readjust the heart again, because it should be quite natural for a child of God to not want to look in order to lust. And then I get with the Lord, and I'm not saying I'm constantly in that state, but I'm in a state where I will have in my heart a feeling that wants to look in order to lust on occasion. Okay? Most of the time, I'm great. When I'm weak, weary, when I often as a pastor, this is something that happens, is when I have a powerful weekend or powerful ministry time, the devil comes at me and my heart is easily led astray. And so I have to be very, very conscious of what my heart is feeling. And I feel this desire to look in order to lust, okay? And I have to recognize from that feeling something is critically wrong in my life. And at that moment, that's when I begin to go through the process of VIM, vision, intention, and method, okay? So if you're new to trying to live pure for the Lord, okay, and to live holy, sanctified, these are terms for living righteously before God, walking in the holiness that Jesus paid for us to have on the cross. If you're new to it, it takes time to become self-aware of when the heart is being led down a different path. But as you stumble forward and fail forward, you will become very much aware of where the heart is and how it's being led. and you're not going to be caught off guard. You're going to know exactly what you're getting yourself into. And you have to fully intend for you to not go down that road. And there's more strategies for safeguarding yourself and putting up safety rails. I'm going to talk about that next week. Some of the strategies for safeguarding and putting up safety rails as you go. But now we're going to get to the meat of it: vision, intention, and method. 1, vision. Remember last week I had them pile a stack of books here. You guys remember that? A whole giant stack of books. And I said, what I know and what I've experienced of God is like this. It's just a couple pages worth of information compared to what there is to know and experience of God's presence. With the vision, you have to see the prize of knowing Christ and life by the Spirit. Jesus said, the kingdom is like a man who finds treasure buried in a field. To his joy, he goes off and sells everything he has to buy the field. This is critical. We cannot change who we are as people unless we see the destination as better than the present temptation. Right? If we don't see the destination as better than the present temptation, why on earth would we say no to pleasure and a good experience right now? Any parent who knows about budgeting knows about how to say no today for a bigger yes tomorrow, right? We need to budget in order to take a family vacation, in order to go to Disneyland, in order to whatever it is, buy a new car, in order to whatever, okay? So I say no to the desires of today, going out to the movie, going out to eat at a restaurant. I say no to those desires in order to save my money for a bigger yes for tomorrow. We have to see the future destination is better than the immediate gratification. That's vision. See the prize. And knowing Christ and walking by the Holy Spirit is the good life. You're not going to find a better life in this world. You could have all the riches. You could have all the vacations. I remember listening to one Christian author that I love. He writes fiction. He writes some nonfiction. Ted Decker. Okay, he grew up a missionary's kid out like on the islands with like cannibals and stuff. Okay, and Papua New Guinea, I think. So he walked away from Christ. His parents, because it was typical at the time, sent him to boarding school. He was treated horribly, felt abandoned by his parents. So eventually he said, Christianity is not for me. I don't want a part of that. Left the faith. He got rich, made millions. He said, after a while, eating $200 steaks for every meal was just boring. It was like the thrill of spending $200 on a steak eventually lost its lure to me. I could travel the world and go to any destination, but they all became the same to me. It was just like boring. And the soul, the human soul, desires something greater than this world can offer us because God wrote eternity in our soul. So when we're seeking immediate gratification, we're losing vision of what God has for us. And we're supposing that a moment of pleasure is better than the pleasure of walking in the Holy Spirit. But that just is not the case. But when we lose sight of it, it's so easy to say yes to something that's totally worthless and unbeneficial for our life and even destructive. So in order to change the heart, you have to change your vision. You have to be able to see the prize as more valuable than immediate gratification. What does that look like in your day-to-day process? Meditating on who Jesus is. In the reading, we have a picture, Revelation 19:1 through chapter 20, verse 3. Read that. Read Revelation chapter 1 as well. Get a vision of who Jesus is. Whew. It's good. Let him become bigger and larger before your eyes. Let the life of Christ become bigger and larger before your eyes. The Bible talks about the Ebenezer. In the Old Testament, the Ebenezer is a rock of remembrance that the Israelites would set up in a place to remember what God did there. You have Jacob, when he saw the stairway to heaven, he set up an Ebenezer, a stone, and to remember this is the place of God's house where I saw the angels ascending and descending from heaven to earth. When the Israelites passed through the Jordan Sea into the promised land, they took rocks from the bottom of the river and they placed them, 12 rocks for each of the tribes, and they put them in a pile as a rock of remembrance. This is what the Lord has done in my life. Meditate on your testimony and the moments that you've had in the Lord. I remember as a boy, I was at summer camp. By the way, if you have a kid in junior high or high school, we're going to be sending them to summer camp for a week. And it's very powerful and transformative. I think one of the secrets to me growing up in the ways of the Lord was going to Bible camp in the summer and spending a week seeking the Lord's presence. And it's expensive though. So if you need help, it's $450 per person. That's a lot. It's a week long. Inflation has gone crazy. I remember when it was like $125. I was a kid, and my parents were pulling their hair out. Like, I don't know how we're going to do this. Okay. But if you need help, talk to us. We don't want your kid to miss out. Like, I will pay for your kid to go to summer camp. If you don't have any money, I'll pay the whole way from my own finances. Okay, that's how deadly serious I am. It will change your kid's life. You know, we want your kids to experience the presence of God. I remember being at summer camp. And you get caught up in the worship of who God is, and you get excited for him, and you learn what worship is, to express what is on the inside with the body. And I wanted to go up and dance, but my knee was just locked up, hurting like crazy. I could barely walk. You know, maybe it was growing pains. I don't know what it was. But I'm like up there like, and I'm just standing there trying to avoid the pain, and like everyone's jumping, dancing. I'm like, Lord, I just want to worship you fully. It's just a childish prayer. You know, it's not like I'm dying of cancer. You know, if I could undo that prayer for someone to get saved from dying of cancer, I would in a heartbeat. But it was my child's prayer in middle school, just wanting to worship the Lord and dance undignified before him and cutting loose and giving him my all, not holding back any part of my worship to him. But my body was just not there. And I'm sitting there, and my sister comes up behind me. I didn't tell her that my knee was hurting at all. Didn't tell anybody, because it just like kind of started partway through the day and got worse through the church service there at the camp, and until it felt like I could barely stand. I don't know if I wasn't trying to look like I was limping or anything either. But my sister comes up behind me, whether or not she saw physically what was wrong with me or just spiritually knew. She said, the Lord told me to come and pray for your knee. Now, before that, my sister had dislocated her knee. It was swollen up, and she couldn't walk at all, and she wasn't going to go to summer camp. So I'm about 12 years old. I say, well, can I pray for you? And I pray for her, and the pain instantly goes away, and she's instantly healed. Goes to summer camp, okay? So then she's like, the Lord told me to pray for your knee. My sister comes up, pray for your knee. I said, my knee is hurting. Can you pray for me? She prays, and what I experienced, I had never experienced before. It was not some psychosomatic experience. No one had told me that something like this could even happen, okay? It felt like hot lava or liquid fire from a pitcher got poured in through the top of my head, okay? Then it went through my whole body, till my whole body felt like it was filled with this liquid fire. And I was like, every hair on my neck and back and head probably was standing up on end, okay? I was like, what is happening? And then all of that liquid fire in my body went whoosh, right down to my knee till it felt like my knee might explode, okay? And then it all faded and the pain was instantly gone, okay? This is not a story I fabricated. It's not a story where, they were talking about, feeling the fire of the Lord in service. Now, I do that sometimes because it's so common. I want people to understand when they encounter experiences like that, that is the presence of God touching you, the manifestation of his presence. But I had no metric for experiencing anything like that. Never heard about it in church, but it happened to me. So I know the encounter that I've had with the Lord, and I know his power to heal, and I know his power to touch me, and I know that his presence is on fire. God is an all-consuming fire. And when I go back and I remember what the Lord has done in my life, suddenly whatever I'm experiencing now pales in comparison to what the Lord has done in my life. If the Lord's brought you out of anything, take time to remember what he's brought you out of. If the Lord's touched you. I remember one morning laying on my bed. I had been praying the night before. I'm laying on my bed and I wake up and it feels like my whole body is being electrocuted. Just like zapped by God. It was terrifying. I had no metric for that. But there are experiences in the spirit that are phenomenal. And the spiritual experiences and the weird stuff like that, and I would call that weird. I don't usually share that story with people. It's happened to me twice just like that in my life. Those experiences are not the point. But the joy that is produced in my life as a result of God being there and me learning how to trust him, that is worth me sharing any kind of weird stuff with you about. The joy of the Lord is better than the joy you could get anywhere else. And I can say that to you on a Sunday morning. I can tell you that to your face. The joy of the Lord is better than the joy you will find anywhere else. You can't find a greater joy. You can't find a greater love. You can't find a greater peace than from God. I could tell you that. But it's not going to be real for you until you experience it for yourself. And when you do experience it, meditate on it, remember it, think back to it. Lord, do it again. Lord, do it again. And he can, and he will, and he'll do even greater things still. And then remembering like that experience that I had of my whole body being on fire is not even a foretaste. It's not even a foretaste of what God has in store for me. Then I walk and I go up to people and the Lord gives me a word. A few weeks ago, at the mall walking, I saw this lady and I just knew deep loneliness. That thought, I could just see it on her spiritually or physically, I don't know, but I knew it. So I got in the back of the line at Chipotle and a family jumped in between her and me. So I was like, I'm going to get out of line. I need to talk to her. So I said, hey, I saw you there. I just wanted to say Jesus loves you. Let me share a story with you. And I launched into a story about how when I was a child, I was so deeply alone. And I told my mom, hey, I need a little brother. I want to just share my soul with somebody, all my deep secrets, all my wants and desires. I want someone to share with. And my mother told me that Jesus is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. And would I want Jesus to be that for me? I said, yeah, that sounds pretty great. Jesus is better than even a brother. Sign me up. I prayed, and I don't know when it happened, but sometime after that, I remember sitting in the dirt and God met me and took away all my loneliness. To this day, I've never been lonely like that ever again. Wiped it totally away, gone. And I told this lady, I said, the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because I felt like God told me that you're right now dealing with deep loneliness. And she instantly, ugly cry. I was like, whoa, not expecting that kind of reaction. But then I got to minister the power of God to her. And, I'm walking away and I'm just smiling ear to ear and filled with joy. I mean, thinking about like she lived up in Canada. I'll probably never see her again, but I'm a part of her testimony now. And when she was lonely, she was a believer in Jesus already. When she was lonely and feeling all alone, God sent a random stranger to minister God's presence to her. And I'm like a part of that story. She'll just remember me as that random guy, that was at the mall and she felt a little awkward as I began to talk to her, or whatever that story is going to look like for her. But I walk out filled with the joy of the Lord by doing the ministry of the Lord. And Jesus said it this way in John chapter 4. He says, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish the work. When we walk in obedience to the Lord gives us spiritual food that is not like the food of this world. The food of this world satisfies us physically. The food from the Lord satisfies our spirit fully. And it's good food. And it energizes us, and it produces in us a wellspring of life. We have to have a vision that is better. Then we have to have a vision that sin is empty and worthless. It's not worth doing. Lusting isn't worth doing. Going through that process, that pleasure is empty and worthless and destructive. So when you're getting a thought and the feeling hits you, okay, it's premeditated. I feel like I want to go look and lust, or I feel like I want to, the Bible uses the term carouse. Okay, this is something that we all do, okay? When we're tempted to desire something that we know we shouldn't, we know not to go there immediately, but we put ourselves in a location where the temptation can fester and build, okay? Like, I feel lust and the desire to lust, so I'm going to hop on my computer and start watching videos, YouTube videos, or I'm going to start watching movies or a TV show. And one thing leads to another as I allow my heart to lead my behavior instead of my heart sending up the red flag. Hey, you're wanting to carouse. Okay, putting myself in a place where temptation could happen, okay? Hopping on social media, hopping on Instagram. I don't even have Instagram on my phone because it's too much of a temptation for me. Is that too honest? Like, why put myself there? Who cares? I'll let other people do ministry on Instagram. I don't need to do ministry on Instagram. I got my hands full doing ministry just here with the people in front of my face. If God calls someone to Instagram to be a missionary there, okay, he'll give them the grace to do that without stumbling into sin. And if they are stumbling in sin, they should let someone else take up the calling, okay? I don't need that in my life. And I know that when I'm on there, it's a place of carousing. And I allow, a small little glance there of someone else's post that I don't follow, but it just happened to pop up. And then another, then another. Then I look more and more and more, and I go down the path. Okay? I need to immediately, when I feel that, expose it for what it is. Empty, worthless. I don't want it. It's going to hurt my life, going to hurt my wife. It's going to hurt my kids, going to hurt my church, going to hurt my whole community. And it's not even worth it. It's just empty and worthless. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. I don't want it. Okay? And this is what I do to myself. I'm talking this way to myself. I don't want this garbage. I don't want this in my life. Then I turn my mind. I want you, Christ. I want to walk in your obedience. I want to walk in your goodness. You are the treasure buried in the field. You are the pearl of great price. There is nothing greater and better and more beneficial in my life than simply to behold God. Paul said it this way: in Christ is hidden all the secrets of wisdom and knowledge. Just pause and think about that. In Christ is hidden all the secrets of wisdom and knowledge. Do you think Christ can help you become a better businessman? If all the secrets of wisdom and knowledge are found in him? That's the audacious claim of Scripture. And I bet you if you put it to the test, you will find that Jesus is able to help you become a better businessman. You could watch all the YouTube videos and read all the books on better business, but if you walked in unity with Jesus, walking in the Holy Spirit, you will discover that the wisdom he gives you is greater than the wisdom of this world. Amen. Intention. Okay? You have to make a solemn and sober-minded decision to no longer live chasing what the flesh desires, but rather what the Spirit desires. So one, you have the vision, but your vision is subjected to the heart, okay? The heart can be led astray, but your heart is the one that intends anything, okay? With the heart, I make an intention. I'm going to, I'm not going to. So I make an intention with my heart not to go down the path of lust or coveting anymore. I make a decision. In Job chapter 31, Job says, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a woman. Old Testament covenant. It's bigger than a promise, okay? You sacrifice an animal, and it's a lifelong devout promise that I'm never going back. Job made a covenant. He made an intention. I'm not going to do this. This isn't the way of life I'm going to. And he made that decision, and he made it firm in his heart. So when he's thinking about looking in order to lust, and Job didn't even say, I'm not going to have adultery, right? That's the normal law of Moses' standard. This is what Jesus is talking about. Your righteousness must be greater than the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and the Sadducees. Okay? Your righteousness must be greater than theirs. They say no adultery. I say cut it off when it's in the mind. And Job, you look back at Job, what was he doing? He cut it off at the mind. I make a covenant with my eyes not to use them to look lustfully at a woman. So then when that comes up in my daily life, I'm saying, but I made a decision, Richie. You made a commitment. And a commitment is important, right? We can hold ourselves to commitments. Even when it's hard, we can say, but I committed. Now, if we've become used to breaking our commitments, it's going to be much harder for you. That's why honoring your commitments is so important. Because if you get used to breaking your commitments, it can be hard to utilize this concept. But then the heart is making an intention. Paul echoes what Job said in Romans 6:11 through 14 and Romans 12:1. To offer the parts of your body to God in worship to him, to be instruments of righteousness, not wickedness. Decide to no longer chase fleshly desires, to turn your back upon them. This must become your full intention, and you dedicate yourselves to that. The third thing is method. Okay, patterns of life and thought that will transform your heart and will to no longer desire the things of the flesh, but rather the things of the Spirit. You can have the vision of what life would be like, what the future that God has for us is like. You can have the intention, but if you don't know how to walk the way, you don't have any method and way to get there, you're going to stumble, and all your good intentions will go down the toilet, and all your good vision will follow the intentions down the toilet. Okay? You have to have a method. This is why Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am that way. I am the method. I'm the method for godliness. I'm the method for righteousness. Follow me. He says, take my yoke upon you. What's a yoke? It's a way of life. It's living under the teachings of Christ, being obedient to him. Take my yoke upon you. Live my way. And it's easy. And it's not heavy. It's not cumbersome. Methods look like fasting. Okay. I fast from food in order to learn how to control the desire of hunger. And my desire for hunger causes my body to go through a certain practice of finding food. When I fast, then I'm reorienting the desire of hunger toward the Lord. Okay? And that's what fasting does. It takes a worldly pattern of behavior and resolving your desire, and it shifts it to a godly way. When I get hungry now, I think about the Lord. It's an automatic response because I've spent enough time fasting that's what happens. Hungry. The Lord is my food. I want you, Lord. And I find myself praying about wanting and craving the Lord when I feel the feeling of hunger because I've disciplined myself and I've shifted that desire to be oriented around the Lord. I'm not saying I'm perfect, though, and I'm not trying to brag about myself. I hope that in some way my life can be of at least a little bit of help to you. You can fast, okay, married couples, having more sex in your marriage is not going to help you to be free from sexual desire. Having less sex will. I know. Okay. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 says, but only for a short while. Okay. But if you as a married couple decide to do this together, it can be beneficial. And it happens to be built into the normal cycle of life after you have a kid. There's not a lot of sex, okay? Because the body parts are repairing. And that just can't happen. And God built that natural fasting into the cycle of a married relationship. Don't use that time to say, poor me, and to fester over lust. Use that time as a husband to be free from the desire of sexual temptation. And you might have to take a few weeks and say, you know what, I need to step back from this and reorient my sexual craving toward craving God and being caught up in the pleasure of his presence. It's going to be hard. I know it's not a popular message, but, and Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, only for a short season, and make that decision together as a married couple. But giving into the desire without orienting it around God isn't going to be helpful for you. And that's why some of you married couples still struggle even though you don't have to. So you take a season and you learn, just like with fasting food. And if you've never fasted from food, start there. Because when you learn how to fast from food, it transfers over to the sexual craving too. And you actually will find that you have greater control over this desire because hunger is more rudimentary. Hunger is a much more pervasive desire in your life than sex is, okay? So fasting from food will begin this process of reorienting the desires to be found in God. But then take time, fast from sex. okay? And whenever you feel the craving for it, you turn your attention to the Lord, okay? And then when you're a married person, you can come and be joined to your spouse, your husband or your wife, and do it in a way that is, thank you, Lord, that you have satisfied my desires with good things. And if you're unmarried, you get extra practice of trusting the Lord. And you cry out for God's grace and mercy on your life. And he is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can stand. You know, that is the nature of who God is. He has given you the ability to stay faithful to him and to not bow your knee to any temptation. God has made you to be more than a conqueror. See the prize and make an intention with yourself. And that might look like you getting alone and you having a journal and you say, Lord, on this day, I am making a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. And then you give that to your spouse or you give that to an accountability partner. And you say, hey, I'm making this covenant and I want to be held to this. I don't want to walk this way anymore. My intention, then the method, learn ways to be free from that. And we need to talk about a lot more methods for things. I've just given you a short little bit. Of tips for the methodology of how to free yourself from that. In closing, in the sermon notes, what we're looking for is God's presence to satisfy us, to be the source of our satisfaction. So the fundamental pathway of Christianity is to practice the awareness of God's presence. It's as simple as that. Practice the awareness of God's presence, even before fasting from anything, even before dedicating yourself to prayer and scripture reading. The most important thing is to practice the presence of God, to become aware of his presence all day throughout your day, no matter what you're doing. Then from there, God begins to guide you and lead you by the Holy Spirit. John 14 says that the Holy Spirit will guide you into all truth. So practice the awareness of God's presence, then meditate on truth, okay? The devil, the world, and our own desires are constantly trying to lie to us, twisting our thinking. And then worship, okay? We offer ourselves to God. This isn't just singing praises to God, that's praise. Biblical worship is a sacrifice. You're dedicating yourself to live for his purposes and by his ways. And I'll unpack a little bit more of what that's like next week. We're out of time here today.